Yeah, Miller.
Call to order this workshop concerning the HEADWORKS Wastewater Workshop for Siloam Springs Board of Directors, June 17th, 2025. Roll call.
Blair.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Allen. Carroll.
Here.
Thank you. So with that, we will just go directly into our workshop. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Tony Brown from the wastewater plant is here with me tonight, and we're going to provide the board with an update on the plant. Basically, I'm going to provide a summary of where we're at, and then Tony and I will address your questions. So the city has been operating under an expired permit for several years. A draft permit has been issued, and it does outline new regulatory requirements for discharged water quality. Additionally, the city is under a consent order from ADEQ to upgrade the headworks, which means the upgrade is not optional. So this project is going to need to be funded either through reserves or through revenue bonds. Now, while reserves may be utilized, doing so is going to reduce it below our 90-day cash requirement. And per policy, this action can be authorized by the board, provided there's a plan to replenish the funds over time. And staff will take the HEADWORKS project to the Utility Commission, as they're required to oversee the issuance of debt for utilities before it comes back to the board for approval. Upon completion of the HEADWORKS project, the city will be able to meet the compliance requirements of the draft permit with the exception of chlorine. The chlorine discharge levels are going to go down, and we can't meet those with our current equipment. To address that, staff proposes transitioning to an ultraviolet disinfection system, which would replace the chlorine-based treatment, and it would require only minimal modifications to the rest of our existing process. However, in addition to the HEADWORKS upgrades, the city is facing significant repair needs for other
Christine,
equipment.
could you pull the mic a little closer? I think they're
Certainly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so.
So there are significant repairs that need to be done to other existing equipment. These repairs can be phased over several years and allow us to optimize available funding sources, including potentially repurposing the 5/8 sales tax and securing a lower rate of financing through the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission. This sales tax would be available as early as mid-2027 and would likely cover a significant portion of the repairs, if not all of them. Furthermore, the state is currently involved in litigation with Oklahoma regarding phosphorus discharge limits. If the lawsuit mandates stricter compliance measures, the city will be required to overhaul the entire wastewater treatment process and potentially incurring costs exceeding $100 million. So given the magnitude of this financial obligation, legal consultation will be sought from Stinson, Leonard, and Street. These are subject matter experts that have assisted us in the past with ADEQ issues. And the city would like to ensure we understand all of our options before committing to such a significant investment. The HEADWORKS improvement project will be compatible with either the draft permit becoming finalized or the complete overhaul needed to meet the phosphorus limits. At the regular meeting this evening, additional funding is being requested to support necessary engineering for the grit removal and a repair plan. The grit removal aligns with the ongoing HEADWORKS improvements, and by adding the grit process now, we can actually save the city some money. The estimated construction cost for the project with the grit removal is approximately $13 million. So to ensure compliance with the consent order while maintaining fiscal responsibility, I've requested a list of essential items, which include an enclosure and some other items with the goal basically of allocating funds efficiently by allowing the city to address non-essential items at a later date. Finally, the engineering plan for repairs over the next 5 years would be developed under the assumption that the draft permit will be finalized. These plans will provide a structural approach for the city to navigate the compliance requirements and infrastructure updates over the coming years. And again, that's assuming that the draft permit is finalized. And with that, staff is available for questions. So, Tony.
Thank you, Christina. Directors, questions for Christina or Tony?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Christina, on funding, you said reserves or revenue bond. Is it one or the other, or can they be used together?
They can be used together. We're talking about $13 million. So we could potentially use them both together, but we also have to have a plan in place to replace any funds that we take out of reserves.
Right, okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Lisa?
If we get the revenue bond and we find out that we have to redo the whole infrastructure out there, can we get another bond, or what happens at that point?
Yes, so the revenue bond, okay, so the revenue bond would be, basically our rates would have to cover the bond. That's what a revenue bond is. And can we get another bond? Yes, but we'd have to ask for a sales tax bond to get bonds. And then we're talking more than 1%.
And have we looked at the state, some of that they're offering up with this last session, they offered up some money?
Yes.
Have we looked into that?
Yes, we are looking into that.
Okay, but we haven't heard back.
Correct.
Have we involved Senator Tyler Dees and Representative Randy Torres on the conversation?
We haven't. They have forwarded it to me for us to apply for.
Okay, and so maybe we can have support from them.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Brad?
so I look, when we think of rates, I think of recently news with Fort Smith, which is the word we don't want to use when it comes to wastewater here. And then the rate increase in Arcoma, just for them, my previous time on the board, and we are going to address it again tonight with a rate study, and we are going to have a rate increase. And many people in the community are going to verbally lash out at us. I would encourage you to look at Arcoma, look at their rate increase, and because of the lack of any increase, and now theirs is so significant per 100 gallons that they're just wanting to be able to live there. And it really is wastewater can be financially damaging to a city. So that's why I like to be proactive and not reactive. And I think we need to be honest with the numbers out there and honest that this town won't tolerate another sales tax. I mean, that's just not a reality. So what can we do? And that's where we're at. So I reached out to some folks, and I went down to the site with Tony, and I just want to get a visual of what's happening. And I don't want to understand your line of work, but I do want to, I was interested about sludge cakes. And the reality of it is, this is the reality, right? So I reached out to the folks that we bought that from, and I just want to make sure, and some of the companies that are in the last paper you gave us, that's all intertwined on that. But where are we at with, are we thinking of, because you're right now replacing rollers.
Correct.
So you're doing a maintenance thing, but And I also, what was the other system? It was not a corkscrew, is it a corkscrew? What's it
A
called?
screw press?
Screw press. So we were talking, I was just trying to figure out, I looked up both of them about odor, because that was one of the complaints down there, yada, yada. And you feel like the repair's good and not a full replacement's needed on that belt, that's right?
That's correct. At some point down the road, we've got to look at some type of redundancy. That way, if there is a major failure like we just occurred at the wastewater plant, we're not down this hard where we're paying a belt rental company to come in and we're paying $74,000 a month for 30 days to separate liquids from solids. So incorporating some type of redundancy would actually aid us in preventing that from ever happening. If one goes down, we have another one to run while we get that other one repaired. And that's what most engineers base a lot of the equipment around, is having redundancy in place. Why they didn't do that with the wastewater plant when it was upgraded in '09, I'm not sure.
There's pros and cons of both of those systems.
Correct.
Okay.
Reed?
Tony, I know you've expressed need, and city administrator has expressed need, and I think I'm concurring with Director Burns. He can say otherwise if he wishes, but I don't want to just limp along. I want to get it done and get it done right, but I know also we don't need every bell and whistle out there. Are you prepared to make that plan once we get an idea of the permit? Or where do we rest on that? Are we in limbo, or what can we do today?
We're honestly currently right now in limbo. We don't know what the decision is going to be until the litigation is finalized. So I can only speculate, and that only causes confusion, really. So we're basically just gonna have to wait for the permit to be issued and then deal with what we have at that current time. We can try to plan to get ahead of it, but there's also pros and cons to that too, because you don't want to get too far ahead of it to where we're removing nutrients at such a vast level that we'll never be under those type of permit limits. So there's,
HEADWORKS, we can do something today though, can't we?
yes, we can.
Okay.
And I would encourage that to happen. My guys are working tirelessly around the clock, removing rags by hand. We've currently removed about 800 cubic feet of rags. And just to give you a visual idea what that looks like, a washing machine is right around 1 cubic foot. Stack 800 washing machines in here and see how much room we have left over. That's a lot of material coming into the plant that is not being currently handled by the screening equipment that we currently have.
Madam Mayor, and so,
Just Betsy, I think, wanted
Oh,
to
sorry. Go ahead.
speak, and then I'll come back to you, Brad.
Yeah.
Betsy?
Madam Mayor. Yeah, the rags, that amazes me. I assume it's people putting stuff down the toilet.
It's the non-dispersables.
Yeah.
Stuff that does not deteriorate, it just stays as is.
Yeah, costs a lot of money.
It does.
They obviously didn't grow up on septic.
No, they did not.
So we need the HEADWORKS and the grit thing you were talking, grit removal would be smart to do all at one time. What kind of timeline are we talking about to get that done?
I believe McClelland was planning in June or July of 2025 to get the grit actually added into the design aspects and work with Garney on getting that completed. So they're going to move as quickly as we possibly can as soon as the decision's made.
So that would be the 13 million.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, that would be the construction cost, separate from the engineering cost.
Okay. So then the phosphorus discharge and all of that, whether we had to upgrade everything would be based on that, correct? Any kind of timeline on that?
No, it's just a lawsuit right now, so I'm not sure how long that will take.
Yeah, okay.
And honestly, they may not even issue our final permit until then. That's what we're expecting anyway.
That's correct.
Okay, so then we'd come back and figure out what to do from there. So I assume we'll just have to probably piece it together as we go. So, okay, thank you.
Brad?
hey, Tony, so, thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the chlorine, is that requiring you to carry the ton cylinders that you leak it through? How's the chlorine working?
It's a bleach product, a sodium hypochlorite. Most wastewater plants and even water treatment plants have moved away from the chlorine cylinders just due to the danger of carrying the cylinders on site. However, it does still leave a chlorine residual behind, and the state is now making us meet a .01 instantaneous maximum level, and we can't meet that with using sodium hypochlorite. We'd have to go to a different treatment process for disinfection.
And on our walkthrough down there, we talked about some of the metering where you're still using like a draw tube, that older. Is that a need, or is everything else that's collapsed more pressing?
I would say what collapse is more pressing currently right now.
Is there a cost on that, on metering?
That would be what McClelland would help us get a number applied to during this 5-year comprehensive repair and replacement plan. They'd go through the whole plant and just basically give us a phase on how to replace everything.
And what do we anticipate engineering cost?
For just the 5-year plan, it was $10,000.
Yeah, well, just on this, on the headworks. Because if we're looking at 13 mil plus engineering, or is that?
That was included.
Oh, well, I thought it was another 11.6 million plus another 1 million. So I was estimating 13 million, but I thought that was construction only.
That's correct.
That's part of the 13?
Yes.
And there's nothing we can do about dude wipes.
No,
I
every
was
city's
watching
dealing with
Shark
it.
Tank, and they said again, it was one of their greatest successes, and they're totally disposable. So, I mean, there are cities out there doing lawsuits.
There are. Yeah.
Can we do a needless lawsuit? Can we start the trend?
I mean, some cities
mean,
have had outreach with education, and that's helped a little bit, but people are going to do what people want to do, and it's unfortunate. It's a causality of that product, and it's caused havoc for many cities.
And for clarity, Dude Wipe's just a brand. It could be any proposed, I don't want to be very specific, but it could
Correct.
be any of those, yeah.
Yes.
Madam, yeah, Nancy.
The chlorine and using the ultraviolet instead, what's the cost on that?
I don't have that number. I can look into that. It's going to be a substantial cost to go to a UV system.
Okay. Is it something that needs to be done sooner than later also?
Once that permit is issued, we'll have 3 years to come into compliance with that .01 instantaneous max on
Okay.
chlorine.
All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, just so I understand, because there's lots of numbers here, and there's lots of plans that I don't understand like you all do. So we're definitely looking at $1 million for the grit removal.
Correct.
Okay. That's a necessity. And I think I'm hearing we're definitely looking at spending $13 million for the headworks design construction. Okay. So, and that's where we get into how we're going to pay for it, either sales tax, bond. But then the $70 to $100 million is, if, that's not a definite, that's,
That would be correct, but also if we don't end up having to spend the 100 million plus, we still have to do the repairs that would otherwise be required out there.
which is the 13 million, or is that outside of that 13
That's
million?
outside that, and what I was saying, I was hoping we might be able to repurpose the 5/8 cents for.
Okay. So we're looking at needing to come up with $14 million beginning ASAP?
Okay, so at least 12 million of that is under consent order. We don't really have an option for that.
Right.
Period.
Okay.
The 1 million that we would spend for the grit would just reduce the costs we eventually pay for the grit. And those two pieces will work with either system we end up having to put into place.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Lisa?
You mentioned in the lawsuit, the phosphorus levels for the Oklahoma, and it would require us to replace the whole system. Are we meeting the standards now per state code?
We're not meeting what Oklahoma considers their water quality standards for the scenic Illinois River watershed. That study came out by Baylor University. Dr. King actually conducted that study, and he came up with the magic number of 0.037 milligrams per liter discharged of phosphorus that would be beneficial for the receiving streams. We cannot meet that level.
Okay, that's based on a study.
Correct.
What is state statute or federal, what regulates that?
That would be ADEQ in Oklahoma did have a memorandum of agreement between the two states saying that 1 milligram per liter was what they agreed to meet, which was what our plant was upgraded to meet, and we can
We're
meet
meeting
that.
that right now.
We're
We're
meeting that
currently
right
meeting
now,
that.
correct.
So now out of the lawsuit, it could end up that we have to meet that lower standard.
Correct, correct.
Even though it's based on a study.
That's correct.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Reed.
Okay, Tony, we're talking about it. Great. What can we do? What's next step?
Honestly, getting the headworks moving forward would be a positive direction to move in. There's really nothing we can do about the potential for the permit. We won't know until we actually get that issued. And there's pros and cons to getting ahead of it. Like I said, most engineers don't want you to plan for the possibility of meeting nutrients that may never come to fruition. They may settle the lawsuit and give us a 0.5. But then if we spend all that money to meet the 0.037, we may never see that in our lifetime. So I think just moving forward with the headworks would help us move in a positive direction, and then the rest of it would be just planning going down the road with our current permit to see what's going to be coming up, down the road later, and just keeping our eyes on that.
And Christina, what do you need from us? Or do you need anything from us?
The next step is going to be determining how we're going to pay for the Headworks project and whether or not we're willing to take that out of reserves or if we want to include revenue bonds. So if we're going to include revenue bonds, that's something we need to include in our rate study.
We need this rate study accomplished and then we can move forward?
No, we have to do the Headworks. As soon as the engineering is done, we have to get that process started. But if we decide to take out revenue bonds, we need to allow them to include the payback for that in the study so that our rates will compensate for that.
You need anything from us to do that?
Well, I will need to know whether you have a preference of using the reserves or the revenue bonds.
Okay. And I'm pressing a little bit because I don't just want to talk about it, I want to do something. So I don't just want to have a nice conversation here and then we sit on it for a little bit. I'd like to see when we can make that decision. Are we going to have a workshop or what that might mean to see what direction we want to go?
Well, I'm not sure how much of a workshop it would be. We currently have about $31 million in reserves. And our 90-day, now mind you, our 90-day assumes we have no revenue coming in at all, okay? So if you keep that in mind, then our 90 days really is sitting at about 28 million. So then if you were to take $13 million out of that 30, you're looking at $17 million, and whether or not the board is willing to have our cash reserves at $17 million.
So, Madam Mayor, and that's part of my question, and I will tell you that scares the tweet out of me to go that low in reserves. I've been concerned about reserves for a while. Just to understand it all, if we did decide to go the reserves route, you said we'd have to have a plan to replace it. How would we replace that?
We would have to replace that with either cutting back on the amount of money that we were spending, and that would increase the reserves, out of capital usually over the next 5 years or something like that. And it may be more than 5 years. We may replace it at more like $1 million a year or $2 million a year so that we have some extra time. Because the other piece of that is the rates will have to reflect the cost of replacing that probably.
And of course, what better person than our financial person to understand all of this? Cutting back, I know you've cut back, you've done a very good job in your position, being careful with money. I mean, it's only been a month. That seems like a lot of cutting back and rather difficult, especially when we don't know what surprises will happen along the way. Your opinion, just your opinion, I mean, are you willing to give your opinion on if you were just in the role of the chief financial officer?
I'm going to say honestly, not today. I will bring that back to you if you would like, but the reality is that, like I said, that assumes no income. The odds are very good we are not going to be in a position where we have no income because we provide utilities every month, right? So I think that needs to be factored into the assessment of how much of reserves I would be comfortable spending, and then if we put the rest of it in revenue bonds, I think that would be probably a wise choice.
Okay, that just, it does concern me because like I said, things are always going to happen. We're always going to need money for one emergency or another, so thank you.
So we are almost to the 6:30 hour. I think that I get the sense from this board that we definitely are wanting to do something, but we do need maybe that information from you for them to really know. We're talking about a lot of money. So I don't know, board, do you want to plan on another workshop? Do you want to have a special called meeting? I know you want to move forward. From what Tony has told us, we don't have an option. We do have to move forward and get some of this done. We are mandated to do that. So give me some direction on what you want to do. Do you want a special call meeting this next week? Or do you want to wait until the next board meeting and have a workshop? Give us some direction.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Time-wise for you two, how quickly can you have something ready? What would be appropriate for y'all?
Well, I can give you my opinion. I think it would probably take me, if you would give me until the next board meeting, that would be great. But also bear in mind that if we do decide that we want revenue bonds, we have to go through the Utility Commission. They have to approve the revenue bonds.
How often do they meet?
Once a month.
Madam Mayor, could I,
Yes.
just real quick, once again, when I made the discussion earlier about the airport and our assets, you know, we're there as a city. We drop revenue down, we are just totally, that's an incompetent level. I can't even use that kind of language in this meeting, I'd love to. But it is time to restructure like any organization. I think we're there. It's the future of the city, and it's happening. This is real time. And, you know, what are our assets, and do we need those, and do they benefit the 20,000 plus residents in the city of Siloam? And the answer for the airport is no, it does not. So we just, thinking outside the box instead of taxes and all this, it's just, it's time to think outside the box would be my words of encouragement.
Mayor,
Yes.
can Utility Commission call a special meeting if needed?
I believe they can, yes. I mean, we can contact Herbie and request that.
If we're needing to push this through, we could push
Yes.
the votes.
So you're asking for until the next board meeting so that you can get that information to them, and after that, if they decide they want to do the revenue bonds, we can request that the Utility Commission call a special called meeting. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Is that correct? So, board, is that agreeable to all of you that we do that? Okay, then Christina, that is your direction, please, and we will look forward to that information for the next meeting.
Thank you.
With that, we will adjourn this workshop. 5-minute recess and then come back for our regular scheduled meeting. Okay. Okay. Call this regular Siloam Springs Board of Directors meeting to order for June 17th, 2025. Roll call.
Blair.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt. Here. Bristler.
Here.
Allen. Carroll.
Here.
Thank you. At this time, if you will please stand with me as Director Hunt leads us in prayer, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come together and work on behalf of our citizens. Lord, I thank you for those people who have invested their lives. Us tonight, and that our discussions can glorify you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would like to ask anyone that has an electronic device to please silence that or turn it off so we don't have that disruption during our meeting. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you. First item is our public input. At this time, I would ask if there is anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the board on any item that is not on our regular agenda. And if you would come to the podium, give us your name, your address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Kent Wyatt, 1109 East Jewel Street. I just wanted to let everybody know that the city has really gone all out, and Chris and the planning division, and they're going to have a town hall meeting. I know they worked really hard to do this for the UDC code coming up. I just want to invite everybody to come out, especially people that have knowledge and interest in the zoning and the development codes and things like that. This is going to be on June 24th, a week from today, and it's going to be between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m., and it will be live streamed as well, but it'd be nice to have a nice turnout so we can just learn about this and be having input into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
Madam Mayor, City Board, Arthur Holbert, 20705 Highway 16, Siloam. Awesome being with you all tonight. I do want to remind everyone that we have our Smart Start Business Bank competition. This is the 3rd annual one the Chamber is doing. There'll be $5,000 in prize money, $2,500 to first, $15,000 to second, $1,000 to third. Deadlines, we'll probably push it from the 25th to the 27th to give people more time of June, to give more time for businesses to apply for that. A lot of good things there. Probably it's at least the 3rd time that I've been supportive of, I'm certainly very supportive of some kind of incentive for local business, Pendercraft cabinets. Basically, I know we've said we want to be supportive of local businesses coming and relocating to Siloam Springs, and that's a great example, so I am supportive of that. Last but not least, I have some incredibly good news to share. Just got a green light to share this. It's hard to keep a secret, but we've done it. Hyper Bicycles, which is Walmart's #2 largest bicycle supplier, has actually recently acquired a factory in Siloam Springs, and we're going to be transforming it on Lincoln Street to assembly manufacturing for some of their most popular bike models here in Siloam Springs off Lincoln Street. So that's a very, very big development on Lincoln Street, and I know I got a green light today, and basically they are looking immediately at getting some forklift drivers. I can't at this point tell you how many jobs it'll be, but it is the 2nd largest supplier for Walmart in America. So they'll be doing manufacturing here in Siloam Springs. Another example where Siloam Springs is a great place to live, work, play, start, grow business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. That is good news for our community. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If not, I would ask if there is anyone here that would like to address the board concerning an item that is on our consent agenda, which is very short tonight. There is not. So we will move to the consent agenda. Item A, regular meeting minutes from June 3rd, 2025. That is our only consent item. Directors, do we want to vote on this, or would you like to discuss it separately? If not, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Barnes.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Next, we will move to contracts and approvals. Contract for Public Works, Wastewater Division, McClelland Consulting Engineers, adding grit removal and 5-year comprehensive repair and replacement plan not to exceed $35,000. And Tony, are you going to present this?
Madam Mayor, Board, what I have before you tonight for your consideration is a contract approval with McClelland to add grit to the existing 2022 contract. This amendment number 3 will do that. It'll include the grit equipment, and it is also including a 5-year comprehensive repair and replacement plan for the wastewater treatment plant, and it's not to exceed $35,000. The breakdown is $25,000 for the engineering for the grit unit, and then $10,000 for the comprehensive maintenance and repair plan. Staff recommends approval and is standing by for any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Directors, comments or questions? I believe most of those were answered in our workshop. If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this contract? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to approve the contract for Public Works?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Next is our contract utilities, the 1898 and Company rate study, $153,400. And this contract was tabled from our June 3rd meeting. Jason?
Madam Mayor, Board, Jason Davis, Community Services Director. I'm here to present the contract for your consideration. This is the rate study, but it'll also include, they'll look at our depreciation, our capital outlay, and our reserves and things like that. So I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Lisa.
Christina, did you say that if we decide to move forward on the wastewater, that they will include in this study the reserve bond or the revenue bond? Sorry.
Yes, they'll have to take that into consideration. They'll look at our cash flows for the next 5 years.
So are they doing it anyway if we're moving forward right now, or?
We haven't provided them that information yet. So they're still gathering information to do their, you know what I'm saying? Like, until we
The
sign the
regular
contract, they're not
base.
going to
Okay,
grab that information from us.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the contract for the rate study? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to approve this contract with the 1898 Company for $153,400?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is grant for our airport, ADA 9010 grant, runway and identifier lights for $6,000. James?
Madam Mayor, Board, up for consideration is a grant application with the Department of Aeronautics for Arkansas. This grant is we're asking for $60,000. The city's portion, it's a 9010 grant. It would be $6,000. One real light for the airport is $10,000 on its own. So we will actually be getting 4 lights for the price, or for about half the price. And the $6,000 will come out of our grounds and building budget already for it. We've had multiple engineers come out and look at the lights to try to repair them. We've spent about $7,000 in the last 2 years trying to repair them and get them working again, and they just keep burning out. So this is just going to get everything working well at the airport and allow us to keep them from being no-domed out like they have been for the last 5 months. So staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Directors, comments or questions? There is none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this grant? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to approve the grant for our airport in the amount of $6,000?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Motion is approved. With that, we will move to our ordinances. Ordinance 25-16. This will be the third reading, amending Section 02-10 of the City Municipal Code, Community Services Department. Christina.
Again, this has to do with changing the ordinance and removing the divisions specifically to community services, changing the name from public services to community services, and allowing us to reorganize the internal departments of the city.
Thank you, ma'am. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
did I get an email with flow charts and names, or did
You do
I
not get an email, but it
Okay.
is prepared and ready to print.
Love it. Thank you. And why I need that is because, you know, I'm a special person, and I don't know if any of us here really know who's in charge of what. It's a lot of structure out there, so just for common knowledge, to be able to put a name to a position, especially when we go to department heads. And if we have concerns and correctives, they all go through the acting city administrator for additional pressure, so thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 25-16? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-16 on its third reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-16, an ordinance amending section 02-10 of City Municipal Code, amending a city community services department.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 25-16?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt. Roll call.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Ordinance 25-16 is adopted. Next is ordinance 25-17, third reading, vacation of a utility easement, 3017 North Hico Street. Megan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, current planner. This is the third reading of a request to vacate utility easements at 3017 North Hico Street. As a reminder, the applicant is requesting to vacate unused utility easements on Lot 3 of the Clifford subdivision. There have been no changes since the previous readings, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Directors, comments or questions? There is none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 25-17? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-17 on its third reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-17, an ordinance vacating and abandoning utility easements at 3017 North Hico Street.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 25-17?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt. Roll call.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Ordinance 25-17 is adopted. Next is ordinance 25-18. This will be its second reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from A1 to R3, the 400 block of Meadow Court. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. For your consideration is the second reading for the proposed rezoning to R3 Residential 2 Family, 400 block of Meadow Court. And as a reminder, this is the zoning that will allow for duplexes on the property, just one duplex for the lot as it's designed at this time. We have not received any additional questions or comments since the first reading, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad?
did the developer come this evening? We talked about that. My struggle with that side is still there, but as I read through this multiple times and realized our department heads that are in charge of public safety have written off on it, I finally submitted to the reality that this site is going to be developed. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 25-18? There is not. Chris, I would ask, I have a note here, or Ben, that perhaps the developer was asking for a second and third reading tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct. The engineer for the project has requested the second and third readings to be combined. I do not believe that they are present.
Okay. So then I will ask directors, do I have a motion to place this ordinance 25-8 on its second and third reading, suspending the rules and reading by title only? I do not. So I will ask for a motion to place this on its second reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina.
Ordinance number 25-18, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code City Zoning Map, rezoning from A1 to R3, property located at the 400 block of Meadow Court, and amending the future land use map of the Siloam Springs 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is ordinance 25-19, first reading, naming of Siloam Springs Memorial Park. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. This was paused at the first reading to make a few amendments. This is an ordinance to establish the name, boundaries, parking areas, and facilities of Siloam Springs Memorial Park, which is, we're recommending to change that based off of some feedback from the board. And this will also set the hours of operation. The boundary has been revised to include all of Twin Springs Park. The naming has been changed to both honor the memorial portion of the park and the historic Twin Springs Park. This is Twin Springs Park. Now you can see in the bottom right, the X'd out image shows the previous iteration that just showed south of the creek. And it was all referred to south of that location, of the creek location, as Siloam Springs Memorial Park. On the left, you can see a larger revision that includes a larger area with Twin Springs Park to include the library and parking lots A through G, with the exception of parking lot E, which services Twin Springs Memorial Park. That does, I believe that would satisfy some of the individuals that wanted to keep the memorial portion of it because that's where the memorial is. But it also incorporates that Twin Springs Park name throughout the entire park. You may notice parking lot G just north of the Hoffman building. That is, I did have a request to specify the parking relative to that parking lot. That parking lot stands out differently in the ordinance as prepared. It would authorize the city administrator to provide exceptions to the parking guidelines that would have the limitations for local business owners that utilize that parking lot within the surrounding businesses that are adjacent to it. They utilize that for their businesses. So it would give a little bit more authority to the city administrator in parking lot G as opposed to A, B, C, D, F, E, and F. So if you have any questions, I can answer those, but at the request of the board, we have Travis Cheney here that will also provide you with a quick history of Twin Springs Park, and that's at the behest of the mayor.
Thank you, sir. Yes?
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Directors, Travis Cheney, Parks and Recreation Manager. As requested, a very brief history of Twin Springs Park for context. Here we have, of course, Twin Springs Park in the 1890s, before much of the historic stonework was completed. This is when folks would come down some rudimentary stairs, bring their mugs, drink from the spring. Within 10 years, it was looks very much the way it does today, with a wall added to try to keep the creek out of the springs themselves. Of course, this has been on many postcards for over 100 years that I'm sure everybody has seen. For those of y'all that haven't been down there in a while, of course, the reason it's called Twin Springs Park is because there are two springs that come out there. The spring on the, what I call the left, it still runs 24/7. The spring on the right does flow, but it's kind of gotten disconnected from the trough that carries it to the creek. Of course, we've had these historic kind of Victorian gardens for quite a long time. We've gone through several iterations. And then again, for those of y'all that have been around a while, you'll probably remember the image on the left is from 2009 that really kind of set the boundaries of what we've considered Twin Springs Park. Y'all remember there was the Maxwell Street Clinic immediately to the south of Twin Springs Park. There's the GAR monument. And then there was a parking lot there that had always kind of been the boundary of Twin Springs. There was the hospital. And then with the construction of the library, the demolition of the clinic and the hospital, and construction of Memorial Park, what I would call the kind of de facto boundaries exist as you see on that image at the right. You have the library, you have what is commonly referred to as Memorial Park, and then Twin Springs would be everything north of the Chautauqua Amphitheater. And that's about all the additional context that I have to provide. Unless anyone else has any other questions, I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Thank you, Travis.
ma'am.
Appreciate that. So, directors, I will remind you this was tabled from your June 3rd meeting. Do you have any questions or comments after those directions that you had given to our Park Director? Lisa?
Thank you, Chris, for taking into consideration the comments from people. Twin Springs has been a part of our community for many years, and so I like the name. Thank you for continuing that forward.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
So having been on, actually on the committee as we developed that site, I'm not hung up on names, and historically that makes sense. I will say on the Memorial Park side of it, and I'm kind of planting a seed for Travis and maybe Chris, but I started a passion project last year. I was not on the board. I was a normal citizen, so I'm allowed to do this. But if you look on Memorial Park, we used to, back in the day, we had a helo pad up there from the hospital, in between there and what we call the Moss House. But we own a lot of that hillside, and so if you remember the old photos that he showed up there, is that hillside was actually clean. So last year I opened up steps there, and we brought back some of the old gardens that were there. We'll be back there. When I say we, it's me, in the next freeze, so it'll be the fall of the year, and we'll be doing some more additional cleaning in there. And the Reach, who owns the Moss House, owns the other side of that slope of that retaining wall. And so we put a lot of effort in there, but I mentioned that because I flushed out a displaced person. So they're not only in the parking lot, they had made quite a nice home in the hillside. And so we're solving a problem, but if we recall as we do this, let's not forget Earth Angels and everybody was here during the warming huts. These are the same people that we were wanting to help with. So we're gonna have another problem, which is we are just displacing the homeless folks again to somewhere else. So just be aware, we've solved the problem, but the problem does not go away. It still exists in the community, and I'm 1,000% behind this. I think it's fantastic, but the problem still exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 25-19? There is not. Directors, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-19 on its first reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Whistler,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-19, an ordinance assigning the name Siloam Springs Memorial Park to the park located at East Jefferson Street and establishing boundaries, properties, and hours of operation therein.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 25-20, first reading, vacation of a utility easement, 311 North Simon Sager Avenue. Ben?
Thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of the board. This is a easement closure, very similar to the previous one you looked at the agenda. We're at 311 North Simon Sager Avenue. The applicant is requesting to vacate an unused utility easement that's part of Lot D4 of the Kale Commercial Subdivision. Now that easement will be shifted to the north for a lot line adjustment survey that's being reviewed in concert with this one. And here we see the survey in question, the easement. That is a 20-foot wide easement is shown right here. That will be closed and essentially is being rededicated to the north with the lot line adjustment when it gets shifted. So the easement is essentially just really just moving to the north there. We have found that this has met all the state requirements for easement closures, as well as city requirements, and we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Directors, comments or questions for Ben? There is not. Is there anyone in our audience that would like to address ordinance 25-20? Yes, sir. Please give us your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Great, thanks.
Jim.
Jim Caldwell, 609 South Oak Hill. Yeah, I appreciate your vote for this, supporting this movement. And I appreciate Chris. I've got some wording into the staff, and they're working with the city attorney to see if we can't save time for the board and save time for the staff. It's a really good example of what the state calls relocating an easement. We're not really vacating an easement. We're moving it along a property line. It never had any utilities in it. It was created about 4 or 5 years ago with a plat. We're doing a new plat, so we're just relocating it. So, yeah, appreciate your support and look forward to working with the attorney to maybe we can get this streamlined. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If there is not, directors, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-20 on its first reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-20, an ordinance vacating and abandoning utility easements at 311 North Simon Sager Avenue.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is ordinance 25-21, first reading, waiving competitive bidding, property insurance, Moss Insurance Group, declaring an emergency. Janae?
Madam Mayor, Board, it is that time for us again to renew our property insurance. We have compared the rates from AML and Moss Insurance through Alliant. They both use the same company. We've compared the price versus the coverages that we receive through them. Our coverage will lapse on June 30th, which is why we are asking for the emergency clause tonight to get this renewed before July 1st. If you have additional questions, Mr. Sid Townsend is seated in the back.
Thank you, ma'am. Directors, comments or questions? I think probably not. Sid always gets to come and just listen, but we appreciate you coming. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 25-21? There is not, so I will ask for a motion to place this ordinance on its first and only reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is approved. Roll call.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Do I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 25-21?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Ordinance 25-21 is approved, is adopted. Do I have a motion to declare an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Motion for emergency clause for Ordinance 25-21 is approved. And Christina, I will let you read.
Ordinance number 25-21, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Mike Moss Agency for the provisions of property insurance for the city, waiving the requirement of competitive bidding and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Ordinance 25-22, first reading, amending Section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from PD to I-1 500 block of North Progress Avenue. Megan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, current planner. This is a rezoning request located at the 500 block of North Progress Avenue. The applicant is requesting to rezone the southern portion of Lot 1 of the reserve subdivision consisting of 11.1 acres from PD planned development to I-1 industrial. The applicant is also requesting to amend the future land use designation for the southern portion of the property from mixed-use centers to industrial to allow for a heavy industrial use. There is an associated significant development request that was submitted on June 2nd that is currently under staff review. This is the future land use map for the property. The future land use map designates this area as mixed-use centers, which is that teal color that you see on the map. The proposed I-1 zoning district is not in line with the designation as it allows for heavy industrial uses in which the 2040 comprehensive plan defines as not appropriate for this area. Therefore, the applicant has submitted a request to amend that future land use designation from mixed use to industrial. On the screen is the rezoning exhibit. As a reminder, this request is for the southern portion of the property, so that's that orange shaded portion. This property was previously rezoned to PD to allow for the Cove development, if you guys recall that. However, that development is no longer moving forward. The site is currently vacant. The neighborhood primarily functions as a commercial corridor and includes a variety of commercial uses such as large and small retail uses, restaurants, and offices. The primary zoning district in the area is C2 roadway commercial, with the exception of the reserve apartments, which is planned for the east of the site, and those building permits are currently under review. Staff finds that the rezoning meets the minimum lot requirements of I-1 zoning. However, the proposal, as presented, does not appear to be consistent with the commercial neighborhood context and character. Additionally, the proposal does not align with the future land use designation for the property, and a future land use map amendment would be required. Staff has received 2 calls and 4 letters in opposition to this request. Those letters were included in the staff report. And the Planning Commission reviewed this request at their June 10th meeting. And after discussion and citizen comments, they did recommend denial of the request. It should also be noted that there was a scrivener's error in the ordinance that was included in the packet for tonight, and I will let Chris speak a little bit to that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Chris Paxton, Director of Administrative Services. Whereas statement number 3 states, and I'll read that aloud. Whereas after receiving and considering a staff report, a motion recommending approval of the rezone was passed by the Planning Commission, and This is an error in the ordinance as provided to the board, and staff recommends striking that. And just as a correction, a motion recommending denial of the rezone was passed by the Planning Commission, not approval. To correct this, staff recommends an amendment to the ordinance that was provided in the packet, just to strike the third whereas statement. If that's done during the first reading, then it should be able to be done with the first motion to move forward. It just needs to be acknowledged by the mayor during the motion and the vote.
Thank you, sir. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor?
Betsy?
So I understand this basically is light industrial, except for the refrigeration units are taller, so that makes it I-1, which is heavy industrial. That concerns me. It'd be wonderful in a perfect world, no business would ever go out of business. Nothing bad would ever happen. But if we were to change this zoning to I-1, it will stay I-1. So if somebody else were to come in, it could then be heavy commercial or heavy industrial. I had asked the interim city administrator about a reversion clause, and she told me that the attorney could better explain why that wouldn't necessarily be a good idea. And a reversion clause, for those listening, would be if it sold, they went out of business, whatever, it would revert back to the original zoning.
The better way to do that is to add it in a whereas clause to let the property owner who is seeking the rezoning know if a certain condition isn't met, that you guys would reconsider the zoning. Since it's being rezoned by ordinance, you will have to then, at the expiration of whatever this condition is, that would have to be brought back to the board to rezone the property once again.
So let's say all their chickens died wherever they are and they couldn't get any eggs, they went out of business, and somebody else comes in, and because it's I-1, they want to bring in heavy industrial. Is there a way, would the whereas clause do anything for that, or is there anything that can be done to prevent that in the future?
No, if that happens before the expiration of the whatever condition you put in the whereas clause, someone could buy the property and then develop the property for any use by right that's allowed in I-1.
Okay. And the reversion clause wouldn't be appropriate because somebody else could come along and say, well, you did it for them, then you have to do it for us? Is that the reasoning?
It's just a property right, so the better procedure, the cleaner procedure is to then have a new ordinance that would rezone the property if the whereas clause is not fulfilled.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Brad?
So I went to the P&Z because I knew this was going to be extremely heavy, and I've watched them before. They struggled. They actually wanted to table it to review it further, but the timeline was there. I wish Kevin, he was out of town on vacation, which people have to do, but it was a struggle for them, and the answer for them was to, from a planning and zoning aspect, and these are people in the community, the banking community, that I respect, they were wearing that hat that night. And that's why it's at our table, because they didn't want to deny it, and if they tabled it, it would have failed, so they brought it to leadership, and that is us. And I asked Chris for some examples throughout the city. And I just think of my time frame in the city. In context, I'll use a couple. On North Wright Street, we used to have a lumberyard, if you recall the old lumberyard down there. I walk out of my house, I have the city compound with a large water tower. And I think we know the traffic there. And I look to the east from my house, and I've got steam coming up because in my neighborhood, there is a pet food facility that we just approved expansion on. And there is a neighborhood there. It's not your neighborhood, but it is my neighborhood. I looked at Gates Rubber Company at Gabriel Park, if you remember. Gates was there. We built a subdivision right by Gates Rubber Company. I just started going through the punch list. Allen's back in the day built a facility in town by the railroad tracks. There's a subdivision there. By the warehouses, there's subdivision there. And then you can go through modern times on 412 and Lincoln and East Jewell. And I just thought of the history of Siloam, and I was on this board, and Ward 2 was part of what now is no longer Ward 2, but Director Blair has. And I remember when we put in Simon Sager, and there was a transition in leadership with the city administrator. Cameron had made some promises, and Patterson inherited those promises. And so, and I'm a big believer in that development of that area. I support everything that's going on there because I think it's the right thing to do. But we phased Simon Sager in I think about 4 phases because we didn't have the money for it. And that was a massive connector street. Last year, at the end of last year, there was a federal permit for a cell tower to go in, and the board passed it only because of a threat of a federal lawsuit, if we recall that. And now we have Elliott Electrical, we have Sherman-Williams Paint, we have Dollar General, we're putting in a housing area, and we're looking at light industrial. If you read your docs, we're going to do rezoning to the west, along to that rezoning for commercial for C2. That's going to be coming up to P&Z. And I remember when we, connectivity and when people walk to work and that accessibility. And I understand staff's position. I was here when that project failed on the PD side. In fact, I wanted to buy a house there. It was a beautiful thing. I had some conversation with people, and it just wasn't feasible. And so the real question is, do we continue in the mindset we've been going down, and we continue this urban sprawl that's nobody in this community likes that I've talked to? Or do we start thinking about connectivity and doing things that are going to enhance, number one, the thing that bothers us the most right now is, as our workshop stated, every problem we have is money. And so when opportunity knocks on your door, sometimes we just have to think 20 or 30 years down the road. This is all bottom land, it's drainage land. I know there's I read the letters, and I have a high respect for those folks, but I disagree on this. This is opportunity. We are going to give waivers to people that built outside the county, in the county, because they're providing a few jobs. We just had Lazy Boy it's getting refurbed and getting a new lid on it, and we're having a great company move in there. And we have to have blue collar jobs, and they have to be connected so people can afford to be somewhere. We have a long history of that. Just look at our industry in town. And so I spent a lot of time looking about town, driving around, and I won't bury you with a list because I feel like I've replaced Director Allen with a long sermon here recently, so I apologize. But I just encourage us to look around town and look at our history of light industry, of industry in general, and what we've done over the years and how we've worked with people. We have also been a community that have said no to Sam Walton. So we do have that history. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Brad, anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Reed?
To me, this is also something that I think has bearing today and has bearing tomorrow for us. And what we want to look at for today is where will this rest for us? In looking into the actual business going in, I don't see that, I don't hear things like it's going to have a lot of odor or a lot of noise. I had one individual ask me about, well, what about all the trucks? And my comment was, well, it's right next to Walmart that has a lot of trucks, so I don't think the extra traffic, or the additional traffic, I should say, would be a bearing on that. When I look at the property, the very front of it has a reservoir in the front. So it's going to prohibit other building going on there, but it also has multiple trees and such. So I feel like when you look at what the building will be, where the offices will be, and you see it from progress, I think the aesthetics of it is going to work well. As far as the property itself, it does seem to be in a low-lying area where building anything's going to have particular issues that you're going to work with to get that accomplished. One of the letters had stated we're going to have difficulty with we may have difficulty with lighting, but it's my understanding that this will be a one-shift industry and possibly go into a second. And I do understand that you could take it to a third, but I don't see where the lighting would be a particular issue if you keep up the barriers and the boundaries that are going to be placed within it. What's interesting to me is this is also in opportunity zone, which our federal government has given a chance for industry or business to grow. And those are all good things. And I want to say yes to all those things. But I also understand there's property around it, property that needs to be thought of when these decisions are made, and how will it affect. And I really like what Director Blair spoke about, being able to revert a zoning or make those changes. Because from what I have seen and read, the business going in would do well there. But what if? And if that what if happens, where do we go from there? And how can we put things in place, whether it's a whereas or an ordinance or what have you? Those are things that we need to address before we finish a third reading on this, if we get there. So I think we're looking at a tremendous opportunity where it's going to bring in 80 to 100 employees. You're going to have your upper and middle management. You're going to have your regular employees. You're going to have people who are going to fix the air conditioning, take care of the yard, keep the place up. And I believe it could be an example of how industry can be a bright spot for us. So I for one, I'd like to see this at least go to a second reading so we can look further into zoning, how we can allow for opportunity zone to do what it's meant to do, but also protect those with investment around that particular area to where, in my opinion, I'd like to see win-win, but I don't think everybody's going to think that. But thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Reed. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Now, just a second. Thank you. Go ahead, Betsy.
I would like to look at the whereas clause so that, I mean, I'm sure if we vote on it, it's all going to happen, but just in case, how that would look or what we need to do.
Well, what you initially need to do is determine what you want that condition to be, that, so we can set forth the intent of the board is that X is met and that the property owner has notice of what those expectations are.
Okay. And with that, because my understanding is the only thing that makes it heavy industrial is the refrigeration or whatever it is. Anything beyond that would make it heavy industrial, can we put that as, or is?
I don't think that you can if you are rezoning it to I-1.
Okay.
I mean, other avenues would be like a conditional use or some other kind of departure from what it is currently zoned as. I don't know if the plan would meet any of those requirements. That would be up for the planning commission to, discuss. But I don't think you could place any building limitations on the project so long as it complies with the requirements of I-2.
Okay. But I would, like to somehow figure out the whereas clause, so if they don't follow through, it'll revert back. And the lighting, when it is, I know lighting was talked about, but when they do have the opportunity to get up and speak, I would like to hear how they're going to deal with that. And I do know if it did become an issue that there's also a nuisance clause, so they could be required to fix it. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Yes, Lisa.
Sorry, Chris, I just want to ask a question to do with something she said. So I wasn't trying to cut in front of you, but I wanted to follow since it was a comment from her.
We'll come to you.
So if we do a whereas clause, do we have to do it during the first reading, or can you add that in during second and third reading?
We can add it in between now and the second reading. It's helpful to go ahead and flesh that out. But that way, that's what really the first reading is for, is to flesh out these kind of issues. And if we need to make changes, we can do that.
And we can do it on the second, okay.
Madam Mayor, I am going to cut Chris off. Can we hear if they're even interested in the whereas clause? I mean, we're interested, but
Well, yeah.
developers are on site. I mean,
Well, that whereas clause is that's going to be a board decision, whether you want to put that restriction on there or not.
they might just go to say, we're not interested. Good night.
And we're going to ask them in a few
Okay,
minutes.
thanks.
Chris?
Madam Mayor, yes, the applicant has agreed to discuss the whereas clause as long as it would allow them to move forward. I did want to clarify one thing that has been said a few times, and that was the I-1, the only thing that was relative to the I-1 use was the height limitation from the use. I'm going to refer that to, I would like to refer that, with your permission, to Megan Thomas, Planner 2, to discuss additional considerations with I-1, because I think that there's a couple of other things that have been left out of that conversation.
Megan?
Megan Thomas, current planner. So I've heard a couple of times the refrigeration's the only thing that's making this general industry. And staff's interpretation of the code, there's nothing that says anything about refrigeration or the height in this. It's about manufacturing industrial warehouses, which do not meet use unit 20 requirements, such as truck stops, retail lumber yards, outdoor scrap metal storage, recycling and processing, automobile salvage storage yards, and airports. And those are things that just don't, it says that are not planned for C2 zoning districts. So it's not about the refrigeration or the height of the building. It's about traffic impact, infrastructure needs, light, sound, emissions. And those are things that we don't have enough details on to speak to at this moment. And that's under the development review at this time. We have first round comments that have gone out. We're waiting for second submittals to come in on that. But those are things that we would look into to see if it would be compatible with the C2 zoning, or if those standards are similar to what you see in a C2 zoning district. It has nothing to do with the height of the building or the refrigeration of the building.
So, yeah, does that mean we can do it, C2?
No, I don't think so.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
She said, does that mean that we can leave it as C2 because you're talking
Or make
about?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's
Or
not
make it a
now.
C2, is that, because you keep mentioning that, I think that's.
So light industry says manufacturing, industrial uses, or small brewery, which generate traffic, sound emissions, and infrastructure needs, which are equivalent to but not greater than planned uses for C2 zoning. And so if we were saying that this is light industry, which is the conversation so far, is that the only reason this is going in general industry is because of the refrigeration and the height of the building. It is classified as general industry based on it requiring sound emissions, traffic, infrastructure needs, which are greater than typical C2 zoning districts. Light industry would be equivalent to what you see in C2 zoning districts.
But isn't the traffic flow the same as the C2? Are they going to have any more traffic than the C2 of Walmart?
So, and that's something that's under review on the development plan. I don't know if engineering has anything to say about the traffic review of that.
But is this part of the, is this what we're talking about now? Is this actually part of the rezoning?
Right, so all of that
Conversation?
is part of the development review. And with rezoning, you have to consider that it's a wide menu of options.
Okay.
And so right now, the request is for I-1 general industry. That's what the application has stated. And so we have to consider all uses permitted within that zoning district. But if it was to go to I-2, which is what the question has been, staff does not know at this time if it would actually qualify within an I-2 light industrial district.
Okay. So with all of that said, do we want to hear from the developer? Because I think.
Madam Mayor, just
Yes.
real quick.
Ken.
So, I mean, I'll just say, it. I have an issue and questions, but I understand both sides. It's not that I don't understand, and those are not my considerations. Sounds like you cannot, and so please correct me, you cannot make a viable recommendation because you don't have all the information you need. Is that close to being accurate?
Staff does not typically give recommendations anymore. We give our findings on what has been presented to us. The request at hand is an I-1 industrial, and our findings are that is not compatible with the commercial neighborhood context and character.
Okay, let me try to rephrase my question. If we waited until the information that you have stated you're waiting on comes in without, and I'm not asking for a recommendation, but would you then be able to, or would we as a board have a clearer understanding of what we're talking about?
Madam Mayor.
Chris?
And I think what Megan's trying to say is all the staff member that's reviewing this can look at is the zoning in its true nature, not necessarily the development. So the waiting for additional input from the developer on the separately submitted site plan would not have an impact on staff's recommendation, because staff's recommendation and about compatibility is strictly on the focus of the most intense use of I-1.
Okay, so for that purpose, you have all the information that you need.
That is correct. For the purpose of identifying whether or not it's compatible with the most intense use for an I-1, that's where staff's report came from, which is, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to just look at the I-1 as planned. I think that one of the things that we discussed during this was the whereas statement that would identify a potential clawback in the future. But that wouldn't be a sunset clause for the actual ordinance. That would be something that would have to be brought back before the Planning Commission and to the Board of Directors based on the date that you provide in that whereas statement. The whereas statement is not a part of the legislative text. It's just a note. So that is noting that the board intends to bring this item back for an additional review and potential reconsideration with the whereas statement if it's not developed within, for example, 12 months. We have spoke with the developer's representative on this, and they are they seem to be fine with that whereas statement and to revisit this in 12 months if they have not broken ground. One of the things that that we did need to note with the city, I believe that the city attorney's office was attempting to discuss was, while it is zoned I-1, it is still allowed to be developed by any other entity as I-1. So within that 12 months, if something happened and they did submit something else, then that would be by right an I-1 development until it gets rezoned again by this board. This board does have the authority, along with the Planning Commission, to recommend it to be that clawback, which is essentially a forced rezone back to where it was in that PD, and I believe that that's the whereas statement. It's not saying, whereas this is a condition of approval, it's saying, whereas you are hereby notified that we are going to review this in 12 months. Does that help clarify?
Shaking her head, yes. She is shaking her head, yes.
But my understanding of what Director Blair was saying from the beginning was she wanted some sort of reversion clause that even once this facility was built, if it didn't work out for whatever reason, that the next person couldn't come in and do something that we might, but it doesn't sound like even a whereas clause would help that.
No, and my advice is don't include that in the ordinance, the text of the ordinance, the legislative part of the ordinance.
So a whereas clause is specifically limited to what this particular company would do with the land. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think someone has something to say.
Anyone else on the board? And so not Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Madam Mayor, Board, Don Clark, 2135 Montclair Avenue, Siloam Springs, Arkansas. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. If you take note of my address, I live in the subdivision that's the closest residential neighborhood that's close to this proposed facility. I'm also owner's representative for this proposal. With us tonight is Don Stoner, lead of Hanson Brook Farms Development, Ashley Swaffer, Vice President of Compliance with Hanson Brook Farms, Ryan Gill with Martin & Martin, he's the engineer of record. Don and Ashley can speak to the company's values and their commitment to sustainability, and Ryan can handle any technical questions that may come up. So real quick, let me just, before I go further, so how do I say it? So the concern about this project not going forward, when you did the emergency calls earlier, Don looked at me and said, can we ask for that? Because that's how committed they are to this project. They are under a time crunch. So if we get the rezoning, we will push forward, get the significant development approved, and we're looking to break ground September, October. So to the point of worrying about, to Director Blair's concern, if this is zoned and our site plan is approved and we build this and they operate out of this facility, there are going to be constraints with this project on 11 acres that I would say would be unpalatable for a heavy industrial use, because we're really light industrial. For someone to come in and want to purchase it and do a heavy industrial use, it's going to take a significant amount of retrofitting, and I would also question if they have enough lot coverage to do so. So that's the comfort that I have as a resident that lives 1,000 yards from this, that it will be what it's supposed to be for as long as possible. So what we're requesting is the rezoning of the 11 acres has already been stated. This facility represents a significant investment in Siloam Springs. So let's talk about the site characteristics. So as you pointed out earlier, there is a detention pond on the front. I also do commercial development for a living, and I will tell you that particular parcel, this is the highest and best use. Typically, we also have a commercial broker here, and he can speak to this if need be. Typically, the first question to ask when you put a piece of property in front of a commercial developer, what is my frontage? This south 11 acres, they will be told, well, you got a drainage pond in front of you, so your frontage is nil. So that, in my opinion, makes it unpalatable and harder to develop as a commercial piece of property. Infrastructure and access, this kind of investment is the most appropriate under industrial designation. In terms, the facility will initially have 6 to 7 trucks per day. And in this in the design that's submitted to staff for the significant development, that design has accounted for safe ingress and egress for those trucks. So to hit another point, C2, I would argue and say that Walmart will have more parking, more people coming and going, and more truck traffic than this facility, if it's zoned that. But I do understand the concern with the I-1. Design commitments. Hanson Brook is committed to landscaping, fencing, and buffering. The facility will be clean, quiet, and designated for functionality, not retail or customer traffic. So what that means is the people going to this location will be the people that work there for those purposes. The other thing I want to talk about, since it's been mentioned, is lights. Siloam Springs has a strict photometric plan that requires lights to not have light pollution. So under the significant development portion, that would be adhered to as staff job is to make sure it is. So light bleed over, photometric plan typically takes care of that, and they have full cutoff requirement here. This company, our team, is committed to prioritize professional site layout and long-term maintenance and to be a good neighbor. I want to talk about a few things here. The project will create new, stable jobs for local residents. It would generate tax revenue to support city services. This facility would be a major utility user, which benefits the city of Siloam Springs since you own your utilities. This project will ensure that the lands does not remain undeveloped or underutilized. I know there's some concern with property values surrounding the area, so let me speak to that a little bit. I understand because I own property near this. But in the real world experience, what we've seen is that well-designed, well-maintained industrial facilities do not reduce nearby property values. In fact, site development often brings improved roads, improved infrastructure. So to speak about that utility pond that's out on the front will be improved by this project. That is a pond that takes the water from Progress Avenue and the shopping center across the street. This is not a heavy industrial site. There will be no excessive noise, no emissions other than truck traffic that is already generally happening in the area. In closing, we feel this is a reasonable, responsible, and strategic rezoning request. It aligns with the city goals. It respects the site's limitation. It brings real economic value to the community. So we respectfully request your consideration of this rezone. Again, when I was asked to be a part of this, I told them the first person you have to sell is me because I live 1,000 yards from it. Secondly, I'm a community member. My wife owns a small business here. I'm a champion for Siloam Springs and everything that I do. If this wasn't a good project, I wouldn't be standing in front of you if I didn't believe in this project and what it could bring to bear for this city. Your earlier workshop is just an example of how somebody can come in and uses such as this, somebody who's paying larger utility bills can help you with your revenue to offset some of those costs that you're gonna have to have. Currently, even the one that we saw before us, we see a lot of residential development. We have to have some type of balance here, and this will help balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
May I ask
Betsy.
him questions, please?
You certainly may.
A few questions. One, I was originally told that it was only I-1 because of the refrigeration units being tall. Can you explain that to me?
I can, and I could also invite up the engineer of record who can speak to that a little bit more poignantly, and then I'll follow up with what he brings.
Well, while you're there, and I know you had talked about 60,000 for jobs. I don't remember, was that a median or was that the lowest paid job?
It's an average. So again, with them being a certified B corporation, to keep that, also for them to, part of that is their committed sustainability, but they also get rated on their livable wages annually, I believe, as well as their involvement in the community. So that would only go up.
Okay. And this, maybe you or the engineer, as far as the I-1, also, why not I-2 instead?
So I was trying to pull it up, and I was going to ask, sorry, Ryan Gill, Martin & Martin, and I'm bad, I'm project pretty loud, so I try to avoid microphones. I was trying to look, we went with I-1 because with my recollection, and again, was trying to pull up, it is a height difference, what the maximum allowable height is. You still have to do the setback, you have a normal setback, and for each additional foot of height, you have to set back further. I-2, the lighter industrial, had a lower ceiling for the height of the building, for the cooler. So that's why we chose that. And the only reason.
So that's the only thing that makes it I-1, everything else would be I-2?
That is correct.
So Chris or Megan, can y'all, I see the looks on your
Am I
faces.
wrong?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Chris.
I think at this point, it's just a matter of opinion. I think that staff, in their opinion, the use as provided was more appropriate with I-1. We have looked in the code, and I-2, there is a development standard that states that the height of the development as proposed. And that kind of goes back to when we are discussing staff reports for zoning, we're not looking at development, we're looking at use. We don't zone based off of development, we zone based off of the uses. So if it's being used in a manner that would be consistent with, inconsistent with the development standards of that zoning district, then it would be a variance, not a part of the zoning. So, in regards to the staff report, I think it's really just a matter of opinion. I do see where the engineer of record had identified that there's a development standard that the project would exceed with that zoning, and therefore chose one that it would fit into. But I would just refer back to the applicant on their opinion on that.
So then it possibly could be I-2 with a variance for the refrigeration, whatever system.
So
Not C2,
I-2 does
I2,
not
yeah.
permit use unit 21. So for them to go into I-2 light industrial, they would have to prove to us that they fall within use unit 20 light industry. And so like I said earlier, use unit 20 is manufacturing industrial warehouse uses which generate traffic, sound emissions, and infrastructure needs which are equivalent to but not greater than planned uses for C2 zoning. So if they were to change and go to an I2, say this is an I2 light industrial zoning, that's not what they're requesting, but if that's what they were requesting, they would need to show us how they are a light industry use, because right now they're requesting I1 as a general industry use. And based on the information that we have at this time, we can't say if they would qualify as a light industry use or not, because we don't have the data on traffic, sound emissions, and infrastructure needs versus what you typically see in a C2. We haven't done those comparisons because our review on this rezoning is strictly based off of the menu of uses that are permitted within the requested zoning district. The requested zoning district is I1 general industry. We have to think of the maximum uses permitted within that zoning district. And so that's what the consideration and opinion is based off of right now, not the specific development, but the zoning.
So their engineer should be able to say if it's fits with I2 with the variance for refrigeration.
I can speak to that. So I'm of the opinion, but there's a couple things I think I need to say. To change the zoning at this point would be detrimental to the project. I will speak in the record. We are in competition with Springfield, Missouri for this project. They're under a time crunch. For us to go back and try to rezone and go to I2 would be a detriment, and the project would probably have to pull the plug. Don, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, at some point I'd like to come up
Okay.
with an address.
So I'm Don Stoner. I live in Knoxville, so I'm not from here, but I handle a lot of the construction projects and light manufacturing for Hanson Brook Farms. Address a few of the concerns. So in terms of us not sort of moving forward or not moving forward quickly, Ryan's been engaged, even though we knew this is sort of a tall ask and that it's not a slam dunk to get this done. We've probably spent about $150,000 on design fees so that if it does get approved, we can move forward very quickly. The machine that goes in here is a $6 million piece of equipment, and it's coming from the Netherlands, and it ships on December 30th. So I have to have a place to put that. We have to have a place to put that facility. So we are absolutely fine with a reversion clause that could be actually pretty darn short, like 4 or 6 months. We'll have this project well underway in that time frame, if not sort of complete. In terms of longevity, Hanson Brook Farms is the nation's largest organic pasture-raised egg producer. Most of our eggs, or a lot of our eggs, end up at Costco, so you know, and we've just recently signed an additional contract with Sam's. If you're familiar with the eggs supply at all, avian influenza is a big deal right now. So our method of producing eggs is actually very similar to sort of way eggs used to be done. We use a network of small family farms, mostly Amish and Mennonite, or a lot of Amish and Mennonite. Our density of our farming is low. For pasture-raised birds, you have to have 108 square feet of outdoor access per bird. So that's actually less dense than most backyard flocks. So if you go up to Berryville here, we're building a company farm up there. It's 150 or 60 acres, and we'll only have 50,000 birds on that. In a quote-unquote factory farm setting, that 150 acres might have 4 or 5 million chickens. And we've sort of proven that our method of production is actually pretty advantageous, so a lot of retailers are moving our way. They're moving away from the big factory farm complexes because they don't want to lose that much supply in any one avian influenza event. So we're very well insulated from avian influenza. Our farms are spread from upstate New York down through Oklahoma, Arkansas, Ohio, West Virginia. I mean, we're very widespread, and no one farm represents more than a small fraction of our production. So we're very well insulated. That's part of why we've signed a long-term extension with Costco to increase our business with them very significantly. So that's what we're doing. We're recruiting growers. We have a whole bunch of ex-turkey growers down in South Arkansas that we're converting their barns. We're building a barn in Berryville. We're actively, you know, we just added 160,000 birds just across the border in Oklahoma. So we have a lot that, you know, we're trying to solve the egg production shortage. So we are a certified B Corp. We're committed to sustainable and full circle manufacturing and agriculture. If you look us up, we're seen as an industry leader in that. We've gotten grants from the US government for some of our sustainability efforts. So as a certified B Corp, we're graded regularly on how we treat our employees, our vendors, our communities, and our customers. So we pay even in our processing and manufacturing plants, we pay very well. We have very strong and robust benefits, health insurance. We provide 13 paid holidays plus another 13 personal days. So, I mean, it's 5 weeks off for people working in a plant. That's very, very unusual. So we partner with the communities we're in. We'd love to partner with you guys, but we're in a hurry. Costco has asked us to grow and grow quickly. We're doing that. We'd love to grade these eggs locally because, you know, freight's a big deal and a big problem. So anything that we can do to help accelerate that, you know, let us know, whether that's staff or the board. We're committed. We do have another fallback piece of property because the machine's coming. If we don't start construction sort of August, September, we're not going to make it. So we're willing to do whatever the board here needs us to do within reason that we can do. Again, we've committed to leaving vegetation. We're moving the facility well off the road behind the retention pond. We're going to put trees or whatever screening we need on the bank of that, so that we're not an eyesore. We don't intend to be an eyesore. We'll certainly have less lights and less traffic than Walmart. You know, if that's the criteria for light industrial, we're not going to have as much traffic as Walmart, or as many lights, or as much noise. Our refrigeration units are not going to be any louder than theirs. So again, we'd love to be here. Ashley's lives not far from here. She was a huge advocate of when we started looking. said, Siloam's the place, man. They need jobs. There's great workforce there. They're all driving to Bentonville and Fayetteville, and they'd rather be here. You got 100 people at least then, plus truck drivers and service people that'll be eating lunch, shopping at Walmart. All those retail places probably would be pretty supportive of this. We're also saying, hey, the rest of the property that, you know, we're buying more acreage than we need. We're more than happy to zone that, whatever is most advantageous to the city. And I think the proposal is to be C2, so that all that frontage where you do have frontage could be used. So again, we want to be a partner. We want to be a good citizen for a long term. And the OZ, I'll address the long-term aspect of it. So the opportunity zone, the reason that's important to us, the reason we're picking this site is because it is in a federal opportunity zone. All of our owned real estate and facilities are in federal opportunity zones. Our owners our ultimate owners happen to be young guys. They're in their late 30s, early 40s. The federal opportunity zone benefits, you don't get any benefits for at least 10 years. You have to hold the property for at least 10 years. So they're in this for the long term. The beauty of the opportunity zone, and I can tell you their plan because I've seen it, it's as part of the federal opportunity zone, the advantage is you can sell it, effectively sell the entity back to yourself and redepreciate it. So it's a massive tax benefit, but it's designed to do exactly what it's doing, create investment and create jobs. And it does come with a long-term horizon. There is no benefit to the federal opportunity zone. The absolute minimum is 10 years. So I'd be happy to ask any other questions about Hanson Brook or our project. You can tell I'm passionate for the company. I've been in the egg business or related for a long time. We're doing things really, really well. Our eggs are some of the healthiest. Our chickens are healthy. We're actually going to be able to take our spent hens and produce food for humans as opposed to dog food or something like that most spent hens go to because they have meat on their bones. They're healthy. They weigh more than typical spent hens. So. Anything else?
Don, appreciate that. So,
Hopefully
Director,
that helped.
do you have any more questions for Don? No? Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, and I know the board appreciates that information. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this?
Doug Allen, 8007 West Ellsworth Rogers. I'm a Siloam native. I live in Rogers, my office in Fayetteville and Siloam, and all my business is in Siloam Springs. I sent y'all a letter last week. I think it explained a little bit about my company so y'all would know. I've been the major developer in this area since 2002. My father and mother and I, we all went together and bought a lot of pasture land around Walmart. My dad finished off Ravenwood. I own Signature Plaza. I brought Lowe's to town, and I listed them all off in there. I provided hundreds of jobs for this community. And I want you to know I love this community. I'm proud to tell people in Northwest Arkansas where I'm from. My question is why does that have to go here? It's going to devalue the land. I had the little triangle there under contract earlier this year, and that fell out due to construction cost. We have 6 acres that abut Progress and 1.47 over here. In total, I have 32 acres in this area to develop. Industrial right there is going to hurt it. The comparison to the electrical supply place is not a good comparison. It costs a lot of water and soap in order to clean eggs. So it is a light manufacturing, more type facility than a store like an Elliott Electrical Supply that was compared to. They talks about 15 jobs and 7 trucks. What's the ratio for 100 jobs? It's got to be substantial. So if you do the same ratio, is that 50 trucks a day? I don't know. But I'm just saying from a standpoint, you take out the manufacturing piece and you look, does this fit this area? Does industrial fit it? No, it doesn't. Why can't we go somewhere else is my question. I realize time is pressure, but you can run utilities to another opportunity zone in Siloam Springs. I paid for the utilities, a fortune going down the east side of Simon Sager. I didn't get any incentives. I didn't get any at all. I put my own money and time into this area for, 20-something years. So I'm asking you to turn this down today.
Thank you, Doug.
So I can speak to scalability. So with the 50 jobs, 6 to 7 trucks go up to 100 at double. So 12 to 14 trucks per day is what you're looking at. And why this piece of property, this is to my knowledge, only shovel-ready piece of property in the Opportunity Zone. There are other areas, but it will require significant investment. I would also argue from the city to get roads and utilities to those areas for it to be developed for industrial projects. We're looking at 18 to 24-month timeline, which doesn't fit this project as well. So I just wanted to speak that into record.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there is not, directors, any other comments or questions at this time? And
Madam
Betsy?
Mayor? So I reached out to the school district and the hospital because they're both nearby and major parts of the city. Neither of them, and I sent them the link to the meeting or to the agenda to look over it, neither have had a chance to really review it. I will ask them to do that and give me more in-depth thoughts on it. Their initial reaction was not favorable to have industrial near the hospital and near the school. But like I said, I will ask them to look further into it so that they have a better understanding of what it is.
Thank you, ma'am. Ken, did you have something?
Yeah, I do, and kind of along those lines, and Reed said something earlier. I mean, we all welcome opportunities into this town for our citizens. I guess just to be very, excuse me, very succinct, again, I have issues. Now, I will vote for it tonight, but that gives me a little more time, and I will do some more digging. I'm not, I know it sounds wishy-washy, I'm not favorable to it, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt tonight. It may be a different story at the next meeting, but I just wanted to let everyone know where I stand on that, even though that's kind of vague, I guess. But.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Betsy?
And I see both sides of it. I'm struggling with this. So I'll vote yes to move it forward because I also would like to hear more in depth from the school system and the hospital. But I also know we have to do the whereas clause between now and next meeting. Is that something we need to discuss tonight or?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Chris Paxton, Director of Community, I knew I was going to do it. Administrative Services. Just a reminder, if you make an amendment to an ordinance on its second reading, then it returns back to its first reading. So if that includes the whereas clause. If you are adding a whereas clause by amendment of its current, then if you do that during this meeting and you do that before the motion, then you can just vote, you can just add the amendment to the first reading through the motion.
That's correct. So if you want to add a whereas clause, you need to discuss that and do that tonight. And you can, the whereas clause, I suggest something along the developer submitted a plan of development and the board will review the zoning within 12 months or may request that the zoning revert back to the current PD zoning. So I think a whereas clause along those lines would probably be satisfactory.
This is out of my wheelhouse, so I would defer to you on that, and I would be fine with that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Lisa?
Someone would have to make the motion to amend the ordinance to add that clause.
You have? Yeah.
Can I request Dawn?
Dawn, yeah.
was wanting to. Want to make a comment?
Yeah, so I will reach out and meet with the hospital and the school district. I've also met with the businesses in the area, the businesses across the street. They're all very supportive. They see it as being an opportunity to increase their business with people who are going to be there doing the day, whether it be a healthcare facility and they get all the workers' comp, or a drugstore, and obviously time is tight on lunch break. You want to run across the street, pick up your prescription. Again, we see this as being a community benefit, not just rezoning this piece of property for our project. And to the compatibility portion of it, as you look at the map, two things I want to point out: that the surrounding this, we have commercial, institutional, residential, and agricultural. So this is a logical transition towards mixed-use development. And, to the latter part of amending the future land use map, you've already done so tonight for a residential project. It is not untypical for cities to amend future land use map. It happens all the time. So I just wanted to make sure I spoke that in the record, that I did meet with the business owners, and I will reach out to the school and the hospital and meet with them one-on-one to offer them to ask us any questions they feel is necessary. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Betty?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Dawn, I was also asked if you've talked to Simmons.
Yes, one of the first things I did was call Simmons. I also called Cobb Ventures, because if you're not aware, you can't sell baby chicks in Siloam Springs because of biosecurity concerns. So I did reach out to Dr. Jean Shepherd. Both Cobb and Simmons are supportive, along with, I don't want to miss this fact, that the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is supportive of the project, to the point they've put together an incentive package for this to be awarded in Arkansas versus Missouri. I've met with Senator Dees, I met with Representative Torres, I met with a lot of people to talk about this project, and everybody was supportive. And so to that point, the Arkansas Poultry Commission also was supportive of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad?
I support that revision and that clause. I think it's a great idea. But I'm also a fan of mixed-use density, and I'm looking at, Reed apparently gets his mail here at City Hall, but if we looked at our magazine we just got, which is Block, Street, and Building, this may not be popular, but this will be the future of Siloam, is that as we look at this area, and remember in front of the school is, I believe that's commercial also, but when I see commercial and mixed-use density and reducing urban sprawl and connectivity for affordable housing, which is supported by the governor, on top of commercial, there's going to be a point on this site, which 20 years ago may not have been the vision of what's going to be developed here, but at some point we are going to go vertical. We are going to go up. And commercial, there's mixed-use density that blends a combination of all those things. And that's another topic about affordable housing, but I have a vision there that started on my second term representing Ward 2, and after the census, it broke up. And all plans, if you are not dynamic and flexible, and you become rigid in your vision, you'll be left behind. We're learning lessons from the corridor, and we have an opportunity to create the Siloam. We always talk about we want Siloam to be Siloam, and this is an example of our history of Siloam. We have mixed-use density well before it became the buzzword. And I understand the challenges and the struggles that board members are having. I just really encourage you to take a look at this area. Why did the president make this an opportunity zone? And then why did he run back and become president again? Why didn't he just leave? There's a reason behind opportunity zones. And it's going to require us to have some vision. It's already stated, it's a 10-year. Nobody's let go of that investment in 10 years. If I'm on this board in 10 years, remind me to leave, would you? I beg you. But just spin that next. That's why we have 3 readings. I just really encourage you to look around town, look at our history of how we've kind of intertwined these sort of things. Before we had zoning maps, code enforcement, and all those things. I watched them develop over the years as a young fireman to a board member, and I just encourage us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, yes, sir?
I'd just like a clarification. It's my understanding that the city sent out to the Board of Directors a recommendation that the planning and zoning pass this 6-0 in your packet. Is that correct?
Madam, excuse me,
Yes.
Madam Mayor. Yes, that is stated at the beginning of this agenda item. The whereas statement number 3 stated that a motion recommending denial of the rezone was passed, of approval of the rezone was passed by the Planning Commission, and staff did clarify that that should state denial and recommends that through amendment that the board strikes the whereas statement number 3.
Okay, so my question is, did that go out in writing in the board packet?
It is a part of that ordinance, is that correct?
It did go into the ordinance. It also states in the board packet under, excuse me.
In the board packet, on the memo, it stated that they recommended denial, but there was a whereas statement in the ordinance that had a scrivener's error that said approval on it. I believe that was the only place where the mistake was found.
Okay, and when was this corrected to the board?
So I believe we just discovered that mistake today. It was brought to my attention right before the meeting.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So,
Madam Mayor?
yes, Mindy?
It's just so unlike me not to say anything during a board member or a board meeting. So I feel like I need to say that I have heard from both sides. And I understand this is a difficult issue. I understand both sides, and I am taking everything that's been said into consideration. So I appreciate that everyone has come well prepared to give us a lot of information on which we can make a final determination.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Heather, I have a question for you. Because we do not have a motion yet. We're getting ready to make that. In that one motion, can we include with amendment to strike the whereas statement number 3 and to add the amendment for the whereas reversion clause per city attorney? Can I make that all in the one motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So with that, directors, I am going to ask, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-22 on its first reading with amendment to strike whereas statement number 3 in the ordinance and to add the whereas reversion clause per city attorney?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Motion with amendment is approved. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you all being here and your input. And directors, thank you for your comments and questions. With that, we will move to ordinance 25-23, first reading, amending section 102-21. Oh, I'm sorry. Christina, would you like to read for us?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ordinance number 25-22, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, city zoning map, rezoning from PD to I-1, property located at the 500 block of North Progress Avenue.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we will move to ordinance 25-23, first reading, amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from PD to C2, 600 block of North Progress Avenue. Megan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, current planner. This is a rezoning request located at the 600 block of North Progress Avenue. The applicant is requesting to rezone the northern portion of Lot 1 of the reserve subdivision consisting of 18.4 acres from PD planned development to C2 roadway commercial. The applicant is also requesting a future land use map amendment to amend the designation for the property from mixed-use centers to regional commercial to allow for large offices and shops. This is the future land use map for the property. This is from the last project as well. The land use designation is mixed-use centers. The 2040 comprehensive plan finds that large offices and shops are not appropriate for this area, so the applicant has requested a map amendment to amend that designation from mixed-use to regional commercial. On the screen is the rezoning exhibit. This request is for the northern portion of the property. That's the yellow shaded portion of the property. The site is currently vacant, and as previously stated, the neighborhood primarily functions as a commercial corridor and includes a variety of commercial uses, with the exception of the reserves, which is planned for the east. Staff finds that the rezoning meets the minimum lot requirements of C2 zoning and is consistent with the commercial neighborhood context and character. Additionally, the proposal does not align with the future land use designation for the property, therefore the future land use map amendment is needed. Staff has received 2 calls and 1 letter in opposition to this request. That letter was verbally retracted by the neighboring property owner at the June 10th Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission reviewed this request and recommended approval with the future land use map amendment, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So I'll continue. We are headed down to AML, and the buzzword down there is obviously going to be change, but this whole area is going to experience change. I read through planning and zoning, and so I think it appears to me that there's going to be more asking for adjustment based on the development of this property. And this property is sitting, and development of this property has the second problem that we discussed earlier tonight, is that we have displaced people that have a pretty good homestead back behind here. And so as we look to develop here, we're going to be moving those folks out of those trees. Just keep that in mind. That's what is occurring behind undeveloped property that sits for many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 25-23?
Don Clark, 2135 Montclair Avenue. So as you heard Mr. Stoner speak, buying more property than what's needed, so the goal here is to rezone and allow for commercial use on the northern half. I will state that we have a couple investors already interested in this piece of property, and they know exactly what's being proposed just to the south. And so instead of being across the street, they will actually abut this property, and they're fine with that. With the C2 zone, what we're seeing now is that office space is at a premium. I think that this would be a great area for some mixed-use development, and would probably, I would state that the I-1 will probably produce ancillary needs that could then be located there, office space, things of that nature. So just wanted to speak that into record. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, directors, I would ask, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-23 on its first reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only, with the amendment for the future land use?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Chrysler?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-23, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, city zoning map, rezoning from PD to C2, property located at the 600 block of North Progress Avenue.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is ordinance 25-24, first reading, vacation of a utility and drainage easement, 407 and 505 Buffalo Gap Drive. Megan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, current planner. This is the first reading for an easement vacation request located at 407 and 505 Buffalo Gap Drive. The applicant is requesting to vacate utility and drainage easements on Lot 5, Phase 2, and Lot 18, Block 5 of the Stonecrest subdivision. This request is associated with the lot line adjustment survey. The easements proposed for vacation are located along the current lot boundary, which divides the two lots and is set to be moved north as part of the related lot line adjustment. The vacate area currently contains a Black Hills Energy gas line. The applicant is working with BHE to relocate the existing line prior to the filing of this vacate survey. A new easement is proposed to be dedicated along the newly established property boundaries as part of the associated lot line adjustment. The proposal appears to meet all requirements as set forth in the city municipal code and state of Arkansas requirements for vacation requests. Staff has received 2 calls of questioning nature on this request, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Directors, comments or questions on this? There is not. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address ordinance 25-24? Yes, sir.
Jim Caldwell, 609 South Oak Hill. Similar to the first one, as it was mentioned, there is a gas line in this easement, so that'll have to be addressed before it's finally filed. But other than that, it's a relocation of an easement that was platted just to follow the new lot line. So I appreciate your vote. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, directors, do I have a motion to place ordinance 25-24 on its first reading, suspending the rules, reading by title only?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you, directors. Roll call.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler. Yes.
Motion is approved. Christina?
Ordinance number 25-24, an ordinance vacating and abandoning utility easements at 407 and 505 Buffalo Gap Drive.
Thank you. Next is Resolution 24-25, Cabinet Warehouse, Waiver and Refund of Fees. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris Paxton, Director of Administrative Services. Staff received a request from a developer that had already gone through our approval process. They're a local developer, and they had heard that the board was interested in providing some of the same incentivization for local development as for some of the other incentivization that we had for national chains. So they had requested to us a waiver for some permit fees. The building permit fees authorize the city this would authorize the city administrator to waive building permit fee in the amount of $9,060 associated with the construction of the proposed Highway 16 warehouse development. It would also waive the street impact fees, which is $2,854.76. This would authorize the city administrator to do that. However, they've also paid this amount to the city at this time, which is a little bit backwards from our normal process. Our normal process is for them to take these items forward to the board during the development review. However, since they were unaware of these options during the initial review, it would require a refund in the total amount of $11,914.76. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Chris. Directors, comments or questions?
Madam Mayor? So what's the utility consumption? I remember when the developer put in the warehouses and I met with them out there. So are they all city utility out there?
I believe they are all city utility. I don't know the amounts. So I don't know if we have any of that information that came with the packet.
So they're manufacturing, so they're going to be consuming some sort of energy. So, so there is a payback over time.
That's correct.
That we'll get through utilities, and that's based on our, do we have another charge for outside the city customers?
We
Is
do
it
have,
different?
some of our utilities do have additional charges for people that are for businesses or property owners that are outside of the city that utilize our service. I believe that is a 10%
10% surcharge, yes.
So.
And I want to be perfectly clear, I support waivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the gentleman spoke earlier, we didn't have them 20 years ago. So it's today. I can't go back 20 years because things would be different. But I'm also, if we approve this, I'm just telling you, I am a fan of infill development with this UDC code we're about to pass, and our representative and senators support, because it's law now, and that we do the same thing going into the future with developers, I think it's a win-win in the long term. Although in the short term, 11 grand right now doesn't seem like much, but after the workshop, it's starting to feel like a little bit. So knowing that, just reminding people that that is up front, but over time, through jobs they provide, we will get that revenue back. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Lisa.
I appreciate what you had to say, Brad. The reason this came forward is in December, we, as a board, decided that we are going to start supporting local developers. And this is the first initiative to put our our words in action. And so that's how this came about. And the property also had some other glitches that cost them a little bit more money than it might have, should have. And so this is helping them keep moving forward. And we appreciate that they are bringing jobs into this community. So.
Anyone else? Not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Resolution 24-25? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Brad Smith, and my address is 13996 Cove Creek North, Prairie Grove. So I am south of here just a little bit. A project like this doesn't come about without a lot of people's help and a lot of people being willing to, pitch in and carry part of the load. And definitely there's been people in the community, and Arthur Hurlbert and the chamber have been very gracious to work with us and help us understand the process. As Chris stated earlier, we did not know that there were any incentives available when we first started the project. And then actually Don Clark, I've got to know him, and he educated me that there were incentives available for bringing jobs and development and things to the community. So just a couple of bullet points on who we are. Our company is 28 years old. I bought it approximately 16 months ago. We employ 21 people. The average wage is $58,600. We'll probably, we think over the next 5 years, increase our workforce to probably about 40 people. We build commercial cabinets for all kinds of projects like schools. We have a very large school that we're doing right now. Walmart is one of our customers on the new campus. Lots of hospitals in the region, medical clinics and things like that. We don't do any residential cabinetry, just really high-end industrial, institutional type cabinetry is our specialty. So we feel like they're great jobs. They have benefits, really very skilled, highly skilled workers with CNC and a lot of robotics and very specialty type equipment. The project is about a $7.5 million total project. My son and I own it, and we, similar to the other gentleman, we have millions of dollars worth of equipment coming from Germany that's on its way that we're going to put in this facility. So thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Brad. Is there anyone else?
Yes, Arthur Holbert, 20705 Highway 16, and speaking on behalf of the Siloam Springs Chamber of Commerce as its president, and this is the kind of thing we want to facilitate. Basically, you have an entrepreneur who has a proven track record of a company around $100 million who could put this business anywhere. This company was 20-something years old, already in Northwest Arkansas, in a community around here, which is a great community, but we love Siloam Springs, and we're happy that he chose to bring it to Siloam Springs. And those jobs would be in Siloam Springs and elite in Siloam Springs. So I would respectfully ask you all to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Is there anyone else? If not, directors, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 24-25 for waiver and refund of fees?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes?
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you very much. Next is Resolution 25-25, Special Use Development Permit, 1675 West Jefferson Street, Suite E. Megan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Megan Thomas, current planner. This is a special use request for 1675 West Jefferson Street, Suite E. The applicant is requesting to allow pharmacy use within a C1A light commercial zoning district. On the screen is the applicant's letter of intent. The special use request was triggered by the applicant's desire to obtain a business license. The site has been used for a variety of commercial and institutional uses for more than 20 years. Therefore, the addition of a pharmacy at this location is not anticipated to negatively impact the neighboring properties. With that said, staff finds that the special use request as presented meets the minimum city requirements and is consistent with the surrounding commercial and institutional uses within the neighborhood. And the Planning Commission reviewed this request at the June 10th meeting and did recommend approval of the request with no needed conditions. And staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Directors, comments or questions for this?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad?
So my understanding is, the only reason is, I was contacted earlier on this. When medical cannabis was legalized in the state of Arkansas, we lumped this underneath that. And what was it, when I talked with Ben, it was like the first time in 8 years that we had anything that might contradict that. So it feels like it's more just in-house correction on that. So I found it a little bit entertaining, but at the time, nobody ever thought that something like this would reappear. So anyway, a little back history.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this resolution?
Madam Mayor and Board, my name's Clint Boone, 5012 South Catillus in Little Rock. Just want to say thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I'm a pharmacist and representing Heartland Pharmacy. We also have Chris Cooper, who's a pharmacist and the Director of Operations for Heartland Pharmacy. We'll just ask that you guys approve this resolution so that we can get open and start taking care of the community. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And I want to say thank you, Clint, and I'm sorry, Chris, yes, thank you. These gentlemen have been here for a long time today, and we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, would it be possible to move their resolution to the top of the list? But because of the length of our agenda and because the ordinance were in front of the resolution, I asked them if there was an emergency they needed to move it for, and they said no, and they very graciously told me, and we are fine with waiting until the end of the meeting for you to look at this resolution. So I want to say publicly, thank you all very much for your patience and your understanding, and thank you for wanting to be in Siloam Springs. So with that, directors, I will come back to you. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 25-25?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler. Yes. Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion is approved. And again, thank you, gentlemen, very much. We look forward to your new business. With that, we will go to our administrator's report.
So I'm happy to report there are no expenditures in excess of $30,000, nor per Resolution 11-25. As mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting, we are proposing a unified development code, the set of regulations that guides how land is used and developed in Siloam Springs. Everyone is welcome to join us for a public town hall on June 24th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. To learn more about the proposed code, there will be a brief presentation followed by public questions. The fourth Friday, Founders Fest, will be on Friday, June 27th, and there will be live music by hometown favorite Maude Crawford. Also, a scavenger hunt, a history walk, pizza eating contest, photo booth, vendors, and more. We had a boots, badges, and bandages blood drive, and we had great support. It was a success. There were 55 successful donations, and that was 35% over the original goal. Planning continues for the upcoming 4th of July block party. Arkansas Country Music has named Tyler Kinch Entertainer of the Year, and he will be headlining the event right after the national anthem. And that is what I have for you.
Sounds like a good time will be had by all.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So with that, directors, we will come to you for final comments. And Mindy, we will start with you. Brad, we will end with you. Mindy, you have the floor.
When Director Burns was on the board previous as a Ward 2 representative, he used to give me a hard time sometimes about using so many words. I think he's way ahead in the word count after tonight. So congratulations. I just wanted to point that out. Next. That's all I have to say.
Thank you,
See,
Mindy.
You're way ahead now. Congratulations.
He'll get to add to it, won't he?
And now you get to add to it.
There you go.
I will not.
Ken?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing. Betsy?
Sweet. First, I'd like to thank Arthur for all your work to bring the hyper bicycle manufacturing to Siloam. I really appreciate that. I know you put in a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes that none of us see. So thank you. Since it was brought up to help local businesses, and it started at that December meeting with the sidewalk ordinance, it is officially in place. So thank you, Chris and staff and Jim Caldwell, who put in all the work to get rid of the sidewalks to nowhere, or to at least not perpetuate them. So thank y'all very much for everything. And to help those, it helps the local business developers a lot. They really appreciate it. And lastly, last time I said it was 4 weeks. Now it's 2 weeks and 2 days to the 4th of July. So, and I even had a veterinarian reach out and say, thank you for saying something. Go to the veterinarian, schedule your appointment, leave messages tonight, whatever you need to do, get whatever medications for your dogs. 4th of July is coming, and it's coming quickly, and keep your dogs and your cats inside, microchip them, put tags on them. It's a huge problem every year, and I understand because I have a 115-pound dog who's terrified of fireworks. But I've already got medication, so look out for your pets. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Lisa?
I just want to remind everybody about Constitution Camp coming up July 14th. You can register online. It's a great opportunity for the youth in our community and surrounding communities to learn about government from the federal level to the state level to the local level. Our MC is going to be Senator Tyler Dees, and our guests are going to be Representative Robin Lundstrom, Representative Randy Perez, Senator Clint Penzo, and Senator Tyler Dees will also be speaking. So it's a great opportunity for your children to learn about civics in a way that, I mean, it's hands-on. We get to vote on Siloam Springs' favorite candy bar, and we create a resolution, we bring it to the board, and we vote if we want that to be Siloam Springs' favorite candy bar.
Very fun. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And before I move to you two gentlemen, I just want to say thank you, Heather, for being here. Appreciate your work for the city going forward and your leadership from that side of the room. It's always nice to have a lawyer handy whenever we need.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We look forward to being here and serving with you, so thank you. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This weekend, we have the rodeo. What is it, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night? And it's always a good time. And if you want to lose your vehicle, go try to park there. Because every truck is about 12 feet high, and if you don't remember where you parked, it's going to be a long night for you. And we have the fourth Friday in June, but we also have July 4th. I want to make sure everybody knows there's a distinction there, because both of those will be a good time to be a part of the community and what we're doing, where we're going. This week, we have the Arkansas Municipal League, and I have to apologize for not being able to go. I say I'm apologizing. I'm going to spend time with grandchildren, so not really. But for those of us who will be going, I hope everything goes well and does well. I appreciate how we as a state, we are a city, we are able to do some things on our own, but we also have some help. And we have, 75 counties, 500 communities. We can do all this together. And if somebody else has a good idea or a better idea, I wouldn't call it theft. I would just call it good use of what we're doing. But summer's going to be here. What is it, next week, I think? So we'll be ready. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Brad?
Well, I am going to ramble on just because of the challenge. And I thank Director Hunt for that challenge and living in the past. Very exciting. I miss sitting by her, but I did like Steve Beers better. Anyway, I'm sorry. So I've just, we have an attorney now. I'm assuming we're working on a new city admin contract at some point in the near future for us to review, because that process is going to be happening at some point. I am excited about the old Lazy Boy plant getting refurbished. My first job was at that plant with Wally Swiderski. I didn't last long, but I did work there, and it sat idle and had people in, and I was just, I saw nomads putting a lid on it, so that's fantastic. I'm saddened to see that the old Allen building Cobb has moved out and it's for sale again. I'm concerned about the availability of a lot of these type facilities along 412 and the strip malls. And so I know the chamber works hard. I know our city works hard, but we have work to do to fill these, and it requires workers to visit these places and consumers. So consider shopping local. Keep that in mind, please. And then we had a Zoom meeting with the placemaking. The little presentation we had at the last board meeting. I attended a Zoom meeting on 6/12 at 1500. And so what's going to be happening with that, Travis will probably hit us up again, but just give you a heads up. There's in several weeks from now, there'll be some pop-up boards at the library. There'll be some signs, some QR codes down by the site for people to load up, and an online survey. So be aware that's coming down the pike, and I'm sure Travis will make us aware of that. There's one thing for consideration. Obviously I'm an advocate for conservation, but I look at Bob Henry Park, and if you remember, there's a bio-retaining system there that was placed in by a grant, and there's a bridge that goes over, and there's a little observation deck goes out, and it's all done with wood. And so if you would take a moment and take a look at that, when we're doing these historical sites, and I know traditionally we go out the lowest bidder, I just encourage us to use craftsmen. An example, the gentleman that did the work down there is with Natural State Treehouse. I do not know him. I'm aware of his work in the area. And for us to be truly happy with these areas that we're developing that are historical, craftsmanship, just like stonework, is very specific to site. And so I would ask going in the future that for consideration that you would take a look at some of his work out there, and I'm sure Travis can provide you with some examples of that craftsmanship that he does. And with that, I would ask that we would be adjourned.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. We are adjourned.